The biggest problem in the Silent Hill series as a whole will always be Silent Hill 2. As long as we have Silent Hill 2 to compare the other games in the Silent Hill series to, we are always going to be fighting an uphill battle.
Looks like somebody has specific taste in entertainment.
Silent Hill Downpour is the second Silent Hill we have gotten on the PlayStation 3, after Silent Hill Homecoming. And as a stepping stone to bigger and better things, Downpour is pretty fucking fantastic. As a standalone game, Downpour is a sack of shit. This tech demo game trend we've had going on lately needs to stop, but that's a different video. This having been said, Downpour is another disappointing entry into the Silent Hill franchise.
Wasn't me. I didn't.
Made only more frustrating by the teases and glimpses of what they could have done, or thought they were going to do.
Something wrong, son?
Did you see it?
Granted, clunky combat, non-existent storylines, and characters with the depth of a contact lens are all ingredients that cook into a crap game souffle, but the real disappointment stems from the half-suggested bits of brilliance that can be gleaned in the game that the creators just didn't want to follow up on. Silent Hill games can typically be put into one of two columns in terms of setting. Either the cult setting or the personal hell setting. Downpour doesn't seem to be able to make up its mind, straddling the line of both.
We've both just been through hell. Haven't you been paying attention?
No, you haven't been paying attention.
The personal hell is definitely the focus, but there are hints of someone or something behind the scenes. This lack of solid direction right off the bat really muddles up the player's ability to immerse his or herself into the game.
You don't recognize me.
And player immersion is a huge part of the Silent Hill series.
We've checked the records carefully, and I assure you, there's no mistake.
Getting sucked into Silent Hill yourself is one of the things that makes Silent Hill so amazing.
Murphy, run!
Downpour's immersion is vague, at best, if it exists at all.
No, that can't be.
In a typical Silent Hill game, players are able to check the environments, objects, and any of the strange stuff that shows up in town, serving to both get the main character's opinions and to help you begin building your own. Downpour, however, thinks you can just go fuck yourself for checking. Corpses hanging from ceilings, dead dogs with their throats slit on beds, and even simple piles of boxes and debris can't be checked. If you're unable to check anything, you don't feel a part of the game, or feel that anything in the game is important. Paradoxically, Downpour allows players to open all the oddly double-hinged doors manually and, flush toilets. Lots and lots of toilets. You can literally flush every goddamn toilet you come in contact with. Why, you ask? Fuck if I know. There isn't even an achievement for flushing all of them. Nor does it ever solve a puzzle, progress the game, or ever come up in the story or anything.
What the hell are you talking about?
All it really does is present the perfect metaphor for the game as a whole and what you did with your money in purchasing it. Honestly, the overall setting and atmosphere of Downpour is actually pretty fantastic. For the first time, we get a fully realized Silent Hill, and on the PS3, and it looks damn nice. The only problem? It's all scenery. It's frosting without the cake. There is squat to interact with except there's nobody to talk to, and you can't really enter any of the houses. So the wonderfully horrific rendered Silent Hillscape is reduced to an abandoned movie set. Empty, save the 2 or 3 monster assholes that only show up to piss you off more than induce any kind of fright. Without exploration and interaction, all the scenery means squat. In Downpour's defense, there are some hastily tacked on side missions which have no actual bearing on the game, but serve as kind of an optional excuse to see the town. While this is kind of neat, don't mistake this as actually activating the city.
Are there any other birds around?
It's just a sightseeing tour at best, with nothing that really matters. And to anyone shouting, "The combat in Silent Hill is supposed to be bad," or "Silent Hill isn't about the combat, it's about the experience." No, Silent Hill is not about combat. This is true. However, Silent Hill Downpour clearly has a hard focus on combat. Breakable weapons are strewn about everywhere in town. Puzzles have an infinite number of enemies running at you until you solve them. Coupled with the very sparse projectile weapons and ammo in the game, clearly shows us that close quarters melee combat was a creative focus in Downpour. Which would be fine if Downpour's combat wasn't fling the controller across the room frustrating. A camera with inner ear problems, more on that in a second, and the forever damnable breakable weapons, this is all just a big clusterfuck of annoyance. Are we really still in the breakable weapon era here? Does anyone out there still believe this is a good idea? Not to unintentionally compliment the goddamn room, but at least in Silent Hill 4 we got an inventory to ease the pain. Due to the plethora of weapons at hand, I get the feeling we were going for a Dead Rising, grab everything you can sort of feel. Which could be cool, but with the weapons not being as prevalent as you would like, and all of them being about as useful as a half-broken swim noodle, it just furthers your frustration of this crap combat. As for the bad combat argument, let's get something straight. There's a big difference between ineffective combat and shitty gameplay. Saying that the combat is supposed to be bad is wrong and an excuse to overlook something that is clearly implemented poorly. The concept of ineffective combat in Silent Hill is brilliant stuff. Stemming from Silent Hill 2, big surprise, it reinforces your hopelessness, your humanity, and builds on the horror atmosphere as a whole. Ineffective combat would be that the weapons did very little to no damage to the enemies, or broke quickly but allowed the player to get away. Combat should be more of an escape mechanism than anything. In Downpour, should you choose to stand and fight, you'll end up taking so many hits that you're now obligated to kill the enemies, just so you don't feel like you've wasted your time. Should the fates align and you actually find a projectile weapon, then the tables turn. Well, sort of. The camera shifts over Murphy's shoulder, a la Resident Evil 4, allowing the player to aim manually. This is good, except that for whatever reason we also get an auto-aim that locks the reticule onto the enemy, which proceeds to give Murphy some serious nuke withdrawals.
Nuke.
Seriously, developers, choose one option or the other. Allow the player to shoot where they want, or just put in auto-aiming like every other Silent Hill. This manual auto-aiming nonsense causes the player to miss simple shots, and it's frustrating as all hell. It's as if they figured out their first decision was actually useful to the player, then actively decided to find a way to fuck it up. Projectile weapons actually work in terms of stopping power, but this isn't about Murphy's inability to fire a weapon accurately. This is about the player fighting the game for control of the crosshair. Your only defensive option against Downpour's 5 enemies is blocking. Blocking does very little for you except break your weapon. This is ineffective. It is also dumb. Murphy is also unable to move while blocking. Blocking an enemy's attack gives no recoil or bonus. It just makes you stand and show the enemies whatever weapon you've chosen for the moment as they calmly decide which of your intestines they should start with. Shit, the enemies have more defensive options than Murphy does. Most of the enemies can backdash, sidestep, and every enemy can block, which causes Murphy to recoil if he swings at them. And then he takes damage. Why doesn't blocking a heavy or light swing from the monsters have the same effect? I understand that they're monsters, but in this game, which still can't seem to choose whether or not combat is important, should make your only defensive option at least somewhat viable.
Why are you doing this to me?
Adding to this mess is the camera, which apparently has severe repression issues dealing with combat, going into multiple seizures the moment you attempt to block or fight if the camera is near a wall. Camera problems. Really? I mean, what is this, 1997? Considering the fact that a lot of the time this game takes place indoors, the camera issues can't be overlooked. Good luck trying to fight or even figure out which direction you're facing when the camera loses its fucking mind. If you've made it far enough into the game after dying from crappy combat or not shooting yourself from random loading, you'll get to make three choices. The player choices in this game serve very little to no purpose, other than to determine your ending. And that's what's wrong with this game. Your actions in the game should decide your fate in Silent Hill. but not with a bunch of arbitrary good guy, bad guy choices that all have the same result. For instance, save the girl, she falls. Let the girl fall, she falls. Haven't we moved past this dark side, light side morality choice system yet? Granted, in Silent Hill 2, the requirements for the different endings were pretty damn cryptic. It was more of your actions that affected the various endings rather than direct decisions. This made the game very interesting and more challenging, but also kind of opaque. But seriously, what's the point of a decision mechanic if the decisions don't mean squat other than whatever arbitrary ending they provide? At this point, you don't care about the outcome of the choices you make. You're simply hunting an ending. Running through a game doing the exact same thing except for when you get the option to choose one from column A or one from column B is boring as shit and still ends up with you getting fucked. Maps and Silent Hill go hand in hand. Rarely in games do you rely on maps with more panic and hope than in Silent Hill. After all, Silent Hill is a large place and looking at the map is a must unless you've memorized where you need to go. Every Silent Hill game has had at the very least a decent way to display the map and read the documents in the game that are found. Somehow, Downpour managed to fuck this up too.
Where do you suppose it ends?
Instead of giving the player a map button, you now have to scroll through your quests, hints, and documents of the menu screen until you get to the map section. Now, if you leave the menu while on the map screen, the next time you press select, it will go to the map. I, however, have a better idea. Just assign a goddamn map button. How is this even an issue? 7 freaking Silent Hill games precede Downpour. Every single one of them has a map button. In what universe do you decide that a map button is a bad idea? Once you manage to figure out how to get to your map, or you pick up a document, well, have fun reading either of them. Instead of being able to manipulate the documents to read them clearly, you do what I call quadrant moving. You can read the top of a document, but not the bottom. Then, if you move to the bottom, you can't read the top, and you can't zoom in or out to view everything properly. You either zoom in too far, or zoom out too much. Why does this need to be complicated? Just let me read the fucking document! As a quick side complaint to continue the terrible idea avalanche we've got going, you only get 1 save file per account. Why is that? I mean, really, why? What's wrong with having more than 1 save? Why couldn't we just use the same fucking save system that Homecoming, another PlayStation 3 Silent Hill, did? They ripped off enough shit from other Silent Hill games, why not rip this off too? I just can't grasp why this decision was made. Beyond the fact that you can't save multiple save files, you also can't save on your own, as there are no save points in this game. You have to reach particular points in the game so that it will auto-save for you. Is putting in a manual save function really that hard? Hell, even Silent Hill The Room had a save point. It only had 1 save point, but it had 1. Fuck, you know there's a problem when we are using The Room as an example of something done well in a Silent Hill game. This forced saving bullshit also causes another bullshit issue.
Bullshit!
Lag. Oh yes. Lag. How fucking lazy do you have to be to allow frame rate dropping and system freezing in a game in 2012? Homecoming didn't have this problem, so why does Downpour?
In fact,
We just showed a perfect example of a game overcoming this issue with Rage, which was way more visually intensive. So what the hell? I can understand the desire not to break the flow of the game by having loading during gameplay, but this is fucking annoying and ends up breaking the flow of the game anyway. Then, oddly enough, as if to just give us a middle finger, we have loading screens anyway. Come on, we really need to choose one or the other, guys. There's no consistency in this game other than it's consistently a piece of. So, at this point, you would think that ripping off older, superior Silent Hill games would be a good idea. But the ideas that they chose to take were some fucking bizarre ones. Okay, so, breakable weapons from Silent Hill Origins or The Room, depending on your point of view. We already went into that. Then there are these running segments of Downpour lifted straight out of Silent Hill Shattered Memories, which serve no other purpose than to activate the 3D. Also, what the fuck is chasing Murphy anyway, other than some kind of headache machine?
Oh god, not again.
Downpour also ripped off the item-specific functions from Silent Hill Homecoming. It's bad enough that weapons are breakable, but needing to find another exact spear hook thingy to pull down a ladder after you broke the one you just had is a giant pain in the ass. Also, on a side note, why the fuck can't Murphy use an axe to grab the ladder? Why does it have to be a hook spear thingy? The axe can hook things too, it's got a freaking crook in it, look! Just do it, Murphy! Finally, the whole bogeyman thing. Now that we've run Pyramid Head into the ground, I think we should be done with the giant big guy who follows you out through the entire game thing. Out of 7 Silent Hill games, 4 of them use this idea. It's old, stop using it. Granted, there are a few hints that the bogeyman, and yes, he's apparently called the bogeyman,
I'm the boogeyman!
is representative of the person's fears, but it's never really gone into, and like the rest of the game, it's very vague and again probably hoping for more than there actually is. Downpour is also the first 3D Silent Hill for the 7 or so people who bought a 3D TV and didn't return it but still regret it. This 3D nonsense directly influences several portions of the game which are designed just for the 3D and nothing else. The 2 most prominent are the run and scream from shit flying at the screen they ripped off from Shattered Memories we spoke of earlier, and this goofy little minecart portion. To be fair, the minecart ride was kinda neat, but mostly because it reminds us of one of our favorite Silent Hill moments, the haunted house from Silent Hill 3. Neither of these things, or the other various 3D bits, have any bearing on the game, and really, the running bit doesn't make any sense or have any real explanation besides 3D! Whee! The minecart bit also led to one of the most bizarre moments in Silent Hill history, right here at the end of the minecart portion. What the fuck is that? Literally nothing comes out of this, nor does Murphy mention it. Big surprise. And it's never seen again. The hell? With a bit of digging, it seems that it was an abandoned boss battle, but leaving that bit in is just fucking weird. Here is where we would traditionally talk about the story. But there is no fucking story. Not really, anyway. A dozen or so half-baked stories, maybe, but no overarching narrative or idea. Yeah. So... the side characters are simultaneously the most interesting and most disappointing aspect of Downpour. While there are only 4 side characters or so, we are woven into the idea that the people of Silent Hill aren't in control of their lives, that someone in the city, or even the city itself, has a set rollout for them that they must follow.
I can't even tell you how long it's been just spinning record after record after record, hoping someone...
This is a particularly interesting aspect of Silent Hill Downpour, especially in the conversations with the mailman and the radio DJ. Okay, those are the only places you get it from, and therein lies the problem. The idea, while interesting, goes absolutely nowhere, and is literally tossed out of the window towards the end of the game. The DJ's hushed messages and hints are fantastically tense moments of the game, and actually was a driving factor keeping us playing the first time through.
You see, DJ Rick's got an important news flash for y'all, so perk up them ears. We're way out of town.
But once you get to him, you get a brief mention and he gets sucked into the hoary nether realm where the forever lost and damned plot of Downpour rests. The mailman character is also great for exposition, but again, nothing comes of... Holy shit! I just noticed the only 2 people in Silent Hill who have to do what the city tells them to are black. Silent Hill's fucking racist!
Yeah? Then what?
The biggest waste of potential character was the prisoners. We have a whole busload of prisoners, and save for Danny Trejo here, we just find their corpses lying all over the place. And he dies right after you meet him anyway. All the other side characters, save Cunningham, are useless filler and add jack squat to the story or atmosphere of Silent Hill Downpour. Sure, Drunky McGee gives you a morality choice that affects the ending, but why couldn't he be more? Drunky could have been a really great side story, but other than the paper we find, we learn nothing about him besides his worst day ever. Then he dies. Whee! As previously stated, Downpour has squat for character, one of the most important elements of a Silent Hill game. Our protagonist, Murphy Pendleton, has the charm, poise, and likability of a stump. Not even an interesting stump. A stump with hygiene issues. I'd call him a post, but posts at least hold up fences. Murphy's handful of choices are arbitrary at best, having no actual effect on the story outside of what ending you receive. And the ending is only determined by how many good choices versus how many bad choices. The only scraps of character we really get out of him are oddly enough from the negative choices and the eventual ending.
I am not going back to prison.
The endings themselves seem to decide his whole character right then and there.
I won't do it.
Nearly every damn thing we can infer from Murphy, and infer is all we can really do, can be overwritten by the ending depending on your quote-unquote choices, which doesn't really make a whole lot of damn sense. When all is said and done, what's Murphy's biggest problem? His complete and utter lack of story and motivation. Why? Because our boy Murphy's story ends 5 minutes into the game. Spoilers ahead, well, sort of. But we learn that Murphy's son was killed by his neighbor.
What about Napier? The guy kills your boy. You go through all the trouble of getting yourself locked up with him, and what happens? I serve him to you.
At the very beginning of the game, yes, at the very beginning, Murphy enacts his vengeance on his son's killer. As the tutorial. Once the guy is dead, what the hell do we care? What does Murphy care? All this considered, Murphy is too flat of a character for us to give a rat's ass, and frankly, Murphy doesn't seem to give much of a fuck either. Murphy has already accomplished his goal of killing Napier, and now he has escaped from prison, and now there's diddly jack for the player to uncover as the game progresses. At this point in the story, Murphy has completed his story arc. At the beginning of the game. What's left? Well, that's just it. Nothing at all. He's simply trying to leave Silent Hill, which he has no reason to be in the first place. One of the most important elements to a Silent Hill game is that the protagonist has a distinct reason to be in the damn city. A need to go deeper and deeper into the horror instead of doing the logical thing and bolting at the first sign of a monster or delusion. Harry was desperate to find his daughter. James was trying to find out why his dead wife was sending him letters from Silent Hill. Cheryl wanted revenge on Claudia, who was within Silent Hill. Alex Shepard wanted to find his younger brother Joshua, who was in Silent Hill. The room doesn't really count because you barely even go to Silent Hill and the game's a giant pile of garbage anyway. Murphy's problem? He has no reason not to hightail it out the way he came. Okay. No reason to stick in Silent Hill.
Find the highway. Put some ground between yourself and the bus.
And don't give me crap about this here log blocking his way. I ain't buying it.
Guess I'm not going that way.
And to anyone saying he's staying in because Cunningham is chasing him, that's bullshit. He doesn't even meet her until he walks further into Silent Hill, and even then she falls to her apparent death, in which case he could easily just leave.
Shit!
Again. Even worse, Murphy's lack of character is only compounded by the player's aforementioned inability to look at or check any goddamn thing in Silent Hill. The Silent Hill Downpour renders is amazing, filled with all sorts of creepy details, but Murphy sure as hell doesn't seem to give a flying fuck. Monsters, dead inmates, dead dogs, people seemingly dying and coming back to life, nothing seems to faze this fucker. The one time you do get to check something is in a room with blood everywhere. What does Murphy comment on? The fucking coffee maker.
So much for the coffee. There's no power cord.
What the fuck? Oh, but hey! For a while, I thought maybe Murphy's blasé attitude was the point. That since Murphy had no regrets or hauntings at what he had done, he wasn't seeing any of the horrors of Silent Hill, a la Laura from Silent Hill 2.
There are all sorts of strange things around here. I can't believe you haven't even gotten a scratch on you.
Why should I?
Hence the coffee comment and his general attitude. But he clearly does see these things, as Silent Hill continues to fuck with him much to his general indifference.
I'm finished with the riddles, the mind games. Whatever I did to get here, I've had enough. I want out.
There does seem to be a very thin, grooming a judge story element to Murphy with his choices and the whole bogeyman thing at the end. But it's gleaned from reading into things at an amazing level and doesn't really make sense according to the majority of the endings. It's true that Murphy does have some story with Cunningham and her father, but the game clearly decided that story was none of our business, as we don't even find out about it until the end, as does Murphy from the look of it. And it may or may not even have happened, depending on the ending, wasting our time and making no sense in the end, as it's been hinted at through the entire game. There are these bizarre voiceover things that are attempting to hint at that story.
Remember, if you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.
But we have no context with what the fuck they mean. It's really more of Cunningham's story, bringing us to the most frustratingly brilliant and wasted part of Downpour. We now come to our other main character, Officer Ann Cunningham, the Tommy Lee Jones to our Harrison Ford. Sort of.
I didn't kill my wife! I don't care!
She is actively the most interesting character in the game and possibly the most interesting element in the game as a whole. After the brief bits of exposition you get with her, being nasty looks, harsh words, and 2 independent meetings, one of her falling to her death and the other of her freaking out,
It is with a fucking bullet in your head.
you realize that she's going through her own Silent Hill game. Again, similar to the folks from Silent Hill 2.
This town, it knows me. It showed me things. It wants me to finish this.
And that clearly it's a much more interesting game than the one we're playing.
Fine.
From fake deaths, increasing delusions, madness, tunnel vision-esque chasing of Murphy, providing her a reason to stay in and go deeper into Silent Hill, all of the signs are there. And therein lies the simplest problem of Silent Hill Downpour. We should be playing Cunningham's game. If Downpour had a Resident Evil 2 style Game B mode, where you could take Cunningham's role through the game, my socks would have been blown away, dragging my mind with them into the stratosphere. It would have easily been the most amazing, incredible, fun thing to happen in a Silent Hill game since 2. Because not only does Cunningham have a stronger story, character, and motivation, but her game is clearly just better. Even the big twist, and I use the term lightly here because there is no setup to suggest anything to be twisted from, is clearly aimed at Cunningham's story, not Murphy's. Hell, Murphy doesn't even remember the situation in question, and in one ending the situation didn't happen at all. The whole ordeal really means squat to the story from Murphy's perspective, and he doesn't seem to care too much about the whole thing anyway. Big surprise.
I'm so sorry.
I forgive you. You were.
Honestly, there are many elements of Downpour that could make a fantastic Silent Hill game. Elements good enough to give Silent Hill 2 a run for its money. In fact, there aren't really that many bad elements of Silent Hill Downpour. Other than the combat, the bad mostly stems from the lack of substance. But each and every good element of Downpour is half-finished at best. Silent Hill Downpour is a game whose most interesting elements are the ones that aren't in the game. What we speculate could have been in the game. And while that might sound profound at the top of a mountain, it's a serious kick to the teeth of the Silent Hill consumer and fanbase. If they had finished the ideas they started, we would have had an infinitely better game. Hell, possibly the best Silent Hill yet. Heck, if they had finished and ran with just one idea, Downpour could be fantastic. Unfortunately, what we're left with is a half-baked Silent Hill more interested in 3D effect scenes than an engaging story or an immersive atmosphere. There are elements of brilliance here, but they are lost in the poor follow-through, and the final product leaves you feeling, well...
Oh, forget it. This is way too gross. Who would even think of doing something so disgusting?